Okay, well, we will begin now. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on value-based licensing in Siemens NX. I'm your host, Scott Tebow from ATA Engineering. I'm going to be giving a brief introduction to ATA Engineering for any of our participants who are not familiar with our company, and then I'm going to be turning over the session to our guest presenter, Mike Senedak from Siemens Digital Industry Software, who will be giving the main presentation on value-based licensing in Siemens NX. So ATA is an engineering services company headquartered in California and San Diego, but with offices in Denver, Herndon, Virginia, Huntsville, Alabama, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and other places as well. We provide high-value engineering services with expertise in design, analysis, and test. In fact, ATA originally stood for Advanced Test and Analysis when ATA Engineering was part of SDRC, which subsequently which had developed the IDEAS software that subsequently became part of NX. So we have DNA, NX DNA in ATA that goes back to our very beginning 20 years ago. We are a classified defense contractor, but also a provider of engineering services to other industries as well. We've done a lot of work in aerospace and defense, and in the space area in launch vehicles, robotics and controls, satellites, etc. Industrial and mining equipment, consumer products, and very interestingly in themed entertainment. Although our customers in themed entertainment always swear us to secrecy, I can almost guarantee you if you've been to any major theme park in the world, you have ridden on rides where ATA Engineering was involved. One of the other things that ATA Engineering does is that we are a value-added reseller for the Siemens Digital Industry Software Suite. We offer training and a lot of free resources, as well as hotline support for a variety of Siemens products, including NX, which is the subject of today's webinar. The Siemens product lines that we support currently include NX CAD and CAM, Solid Edge, SimCenter Star CCM Plus, SimCenter FEMAT, SimCenter Nastran, which was formerly known as NX Nastran, SimCenter 3D, and Teamcenter. We do, as I mentioned, offer a support hotline for all the products that we sell. And very interestingly, we are also the developer of the official SimCenter Nastran training materials. And we are the preferred North American provider of SimCenter Nastran training. We are a Smart Expert partner and a platinum level solutions partner with Siemens Digital Industry Software with validated expertise in FEMAT, Star CCM Plus, and SimCenter 3D. You can visit our website for product information and a lot of free resources, including recordings of past webinars, very much like the one we're participating in today. And I should note that today's webinar is also being recorded. So if you have friends or colleagues who were not able to make it to today's webinar and would like to access it, this is the website to go to, and the recording should be available by the end of the business day today. So now I would like to turn over the session to Mike Senedak from Siemens Digital Industry Software, who is going to be doing our main presentation today on value-based, that is token, licensing for Siemens NX.
All right, thank you, Scott. Hopefully you guys can see the presentation now. So our topic for today, as Scott mentioned, is really all around our value-based licensing. And you may hear us refer that interchangeably as NX tokens. So we really want to show you how you can extend your designer toolbox today with the use of adding on tokens to your installation. So over the next 30, maybe 40 minutes, some of the topics for our agenda is really, what are NX tokens? How is it licensed? How does it work? What are some key capabilities of the token licensing? how do you get started with it? And then really, why would you choose this method? What does it really bring the value to you? And then we'll have a Q&A session. If there's any questions, please put those into the chat window, and we'll cover those at the end. So let's begin with what are the NX tokens? So I think many of you are familiar with, we have a bundle, which is our mock bundles for most people, and they have add-on modules that they put on for specific additional functionality. So it's really those building blocks, but you spend money specifically on a particular module, and normally that floats around to your users. So that's our traditional approach of how we package NX today. What we've added with the tokens is you'll still be working with a bundle. You'll still have a mock bundle to work from, but instead of licensing the individual specific module, you can alternately purchase tokens. And so they come in certain value packs, and we'll talk about that momentarily, but the tokens allow you to mix and match what different types of modules you'd like to use. So instead of being restricted, with, particular, say, advanced sheet metal, you get over 50 modules in the token pool. And what that allows your users, as they're working, they can go in and select on a particular command, work with those functions that would be normally in a particular module. And so where this really helps is that in case you did not own a specific module, they could still gain access to that with the token pool. And so you can mix and match it. It provides a really flexible approach to using the different modules, as well as a cost-effective way to do this. So instead of having to buy one of each of these modules, by buying just the token pool, you can access, again, over 50 modules within the NX design environment. And so how is this licensed? The main way we license it is value packs. So you can either buy them in 100 or 50, and it's just like you would buy any other NX license. So there's product codes that the ATA team can quote you and sell you. They are on a subscription basis, so we don't have any perpetual. It's just a subscription license for that. And again, the numbers are either the 100 in increments of 100 or 50 that you can mix and match together. And this is a floating mechanism. So you put this onto your license sheet and your FlexLM license, just like any other module, and it will move around to any of the designers within your organization. So some things a little bit more about that, right? Some of the frequently asked questions around this is, tokens are focused at more of the casual usage of the design modules. So if it's a specific thing, again, the advanced sheet metal is an example. If you're in that every day and you're using that a lot, tokens may or may not fit that bill. If you go in every so often, then that might be a good way to use the tokens to access that functionality. But for ones that you're in all the time, you might still go with the actual add-on module. But if it's casual usage, other ones are like the translators, the direct translators. You may not want to spend that money because you're using those infrequently. You only use them a couple times, a week or a month or a year. The tokens are perfect for that, right? So that's something that you're only going in every once in a while to use. And, this would be a perfect mechanism for that. So you do require a base application. Tokens can only be added with a Mach 1 floating bundle or higher. So if you had a Mach 2 or Mach 3, that would be fine. But that is the mechanism that drives the token. So it does have to be a base application. Also, the first token value pack that you buy is required to be 100. So with 100, you actually can get access to 99% of the add-on modules. There's only one that I know of right now that actually is a little bit above 100. But otherwise, you would have access to, if you just bought 100, you could access all of the functions within there. Another one that comes up a lot is the Teamcenter tokens. Teamcenter has their own set of tokens, and the NX design tokens, they are actually different today. And you'll hear more about that on another webinar that ATA is holding to talk about the Teamcenter tokens. But today they're actually in a separate pool of tokens. So you could foreseeably have a pack of NX Design tokens and a pack of Teamcenter tokens. From a release perspective, we started this with the NX 1872 release. So that was in the continuous release process. So anything 1872 or newer, you can run the tokens. But we also had a big request from some customers that were still on NX 12. And so you can see on the slide the 1202 MP maintenance pack 14 or greater will support the tokens as well. So pretty broad stretch of coverage there for starting to use tokens. As I mentioned, it is a subscription only. So you do have subscription, and this is set up on an annual basis. So that's how they are sold. And the other thing is from a borrowing perspective, we cannot borrow the tokens. So, if somebody wanted to put those on a laptop and go remotely, those we do not make that available at this time. So how does it work? What's the mechanism for the user? Do they have to do anything special to be able to access this? So let's look at a simple use case. If we had 5 users and say they all had the Mach 1 floating seats and we had purchased 100 pack of tokens. So with that, you can see each person is going to be licensed with the Mach 1. And then we have the token pool at the bottom of 100. So if I started off and I wanted to use the human modeling, each module that's within the token pool has a little bit different value based on what their list price cost is. So in this case, human modeling requires the 26 tokens. So what you see is from our 100 token pool, it draws that down to 74. So there's 74 tokens for the other 4 users to access. So I might continue to be working. Now maybe May steps in and she starts using the realized shape. So that would pull another 35 tokens to use that particular functionality out of the token pool. So now we're down to 39. So at this point, if the other 3 users would like to access something, as long as the functions that they're going to pull are not above 39, they're good to go. If it was above that, then they would have to wait until somebody was done. So just like that, if I finished after maybe say 45 minutes, I was working with the human modeling, those 26 tokens go back into the pool. So you can see we've bumped it back up from 39 to 65, and other people can go in and use functions off of the token pool. And so same thing, maybe our other user comes in and they start the routing base and they're pulling 25 tokens there. So as you can see, that fluctuates throughout the day and throughout the hours that people are working on it. But all it is it's just like the floating licenses that you would have. You go in and use so many and you put them back. So you always have the 100 tokens. It's always, you're not throwing those away when you're done with it, or it doesn't completely lock those up. It is that pool, and the level of the pool goes up and down throughout the day. So let's talk a little bit about the capabilities. What is part of the token pool? So when you look at the entire portfolio on the NX Design, we have obviously the bulk of it around the mechanical design, but we have some electrical tools, we have some process-based tools, and we have some automation tools. And so all of that will show you what is available. We cover across the entire spectrum there. And the idea is really around the first pillar, right? How to make the designers more productive, to give them more tools to put in their hands to get their job done. So this is a list of what is available in the token pool. And you can see really in these main key areas, right? So if we look at the mechanical design, some common things that people always ask for is, they need some advanced sheet metal functionality, or they'd like to use the path extraction and assembly sequencing, or they need to do some basic kinematic motion studies or ergonomic studies, as well as how could I use the native NX viewer, or hey, I'd like to use the weld design, right? I'd like to put some of the 3D welds onto the models. So all of those functions, are part of, the mechanical design. So you look at advanced sheet metal, assembly path planning, animation designer, human modeling, and the like. Also, as we get down to industrial design and styling, there is one piece there, our subdivision modeling tools. So that's our realized shape is available to you. So if you're doing concept modeling, whether that be for consumer products, could be automotive, some aerospace applications, that's available to you to access. And then another area is our routing capabilities. So whether you're doing harness design, whether you're doing piping and tubing, all of those things, you can access those through the tokens as well. And then another one that we talked about were the translators. So we have some of our direct translators for CATIA and Pro-E interface inside Pro-E Creo. Also some specialized ones for ASIS, which is the Autodesk modeling kernel, similar to our Parasolid, and the Step 242, which helps with model-based definition. So those are some things that would be very valuable. Again, things on a casual use basis, we're trying to go in, translate something, bring it into the system. And then also a number of tooling and fixture design. So many of our tooling wizards, whether that be Mold Wizard or Progressive Die Wizard, any of those types of tools are in there, as well as for costing, tooling costing, and then sheet metal flattening. So for complex parts, we use the one-step formability. And then finally, if you look across the list, there are many industry-specific tools that we have created, and those are available through the token pool. So we have an aerospace design. So if you're doing aerostructure design, there are a number of tools that are focused at that industry. Things like the ship design. So those that are building cargo ships, container ships, anything like that, there are a set of tools that are available there. And then for the automotive industry, we have our vehicle design automation. And this really, you'll see some examples as we go through the rest of the demos. And then finally, for the machinery industry, the mechatronics concept designer, this really helps from a motion study as well as connecting out and performing virtual commissioning. So let's take a moment and let's look at some of that functionality. We won't obviously in this short time go through all of them, but let's look at some of the key ones that we have here. So one that I know a lot of people ask me about is, I'm working in assembly sequencing, which is part of assemblies, but I'd like to figure out how can I extract that part from the assembly. So in this case, we're looking at an aerospace example. Can we remove that seat out of the plane without hitting into things? Do we need to take other things out? This is kind of a high-level example, but a more realistic one that you might run into is, hey, we're working in an engine compartment, or we're working to remove some pieces, and we want to help with how do we develop that maintenance operation? How do we let the system calculate and figure out how to get that part out of there? Could we get it without having to take all these extra pieces off of, say, the engine or whatever compartment we're working in? So what this allows you to do is you can go in, specify the start point and the end point, and what the system will do then is it will go in and figure out what that calculation, can it in fact be removed without colliding with the other parts in the assembly. And one nice thing also is, besides you see the actual extraction path, it also will create a faceted body that will show the path that it's taken of that solid. So it's something like a swept solid that will show you those. So again, something that you wouldn't necessarily, some customers wouldn't necessarily go out and purchase that by itself, but by having it in this pool, now you have a productive tool to help your designers. Another one is human modeling. we have the powerful capabilities of our Jack and Jill software. We have much of that built into the NX environment. So we have the anthropomorphic models that we can put the humans in. And why would we do that? We'd want to look for, how is their posture? What is their reach zones? How comfortable are they? It looks at all those ergonomics of the people. You can check for clearance and for vision. And that's really what we're showing here, is that you could go in and add those into the model. Now you say, well, we just dropped them in as standing, but you can control them and set them up. So as you're working, you can go ahead and begin to put them and control how their hands are gripping, how they're seated, how their legs are bent. But you have all of the actual data, about those people based on the 50th percentile or the 90th percentile. How would they go in? So whether it's automobile, whether it's aerospace, heavy equipment that you might be working and designing, you can see how you can add those people in and then use that to study what the difference is. So you can see there's a big difference between, say, the 50th percentile male in the vehicle versus a 50th percentile female. What problems might we have with either person besides just moving the seat up for reach and other things? And as I mentioned, the other area is also when you go in, you can see vision. So just by moving that occupant's head and using quickly the drag handles to move that head as they look down or to right or left, you can see what can they see either on the instrument panel, or if you had them in the entire vehicle, where do they have some blind spots? Where can't they see as they move around and look in there? So again, trying to reduce those physical prototypes, and you can see how much you could get done inside the human modeling. So another tool that comes in handy, and we're using more of a machine design example here, is the animation designer. So this tool is a couple releases. It's been into NX now, but what this is really a step between, if you just did assemblies and assembly constraints, how could you move the parts and going to full NX motion? So this is that intermediate spot where I'm not really worried at this stage about the loads and accelerations. I really just want to be able to put something into motion, check for interference, see how the entire kinematics of it move, and determine, hey, do we need to extend something? Do we need to adapt? And so it's a very visual environment. As you go in and select the groupings of the components, you can either use the on screen, or you can also do the things from the assembly navigator, right? So as you're building that up, you also see the coloration on the screen. So you see the different groupings, as well as then applying the different joints that connect those up to one another. So very simple process. What's nice is as you go through this, this is all scalable. So as you move from assemblies, you could inherit those assembly constraints. As you move into motion, you can pull this information forward. So things that you might see then is, just physically just dragging it with the drag handles, or as you go on, you can use the timeline. So we can put different things to showcase, hey, if these position motors, it moves it to a position, it's easy to copy and mirror so that you can show as it goes out and then as it comes back, right? And very quick to go through and set those up. But right away you can check, again, interference, measurements, all of those types of things that you can build into the design. And then finally, one other area that people use it for is just to create realistic animations for proposals. Instead of just giving them drawings, you can capture this information, create an animation of it. So as we go through it, you can have things turn on and off. You can have exploded views of the information. So all of that is using, just this graphical drag and drop, how you want to develop those. And so that just gives you a chance to see, hey, here's the final product out of that. So a number of tools inside of this animation designer that really come in handy. And again, because under normal circumstances, somebody would have to buy the add-on module. Now with the token pool, you could access and make use of this. So another one that's industry focused is, the aerospace design. So in there's some very specific things as you're doing the aerostructure development. So things like the flange so that it matches up to the skin of the aircraft, the way the ribs are developed, or the shelf and the step as these stringers come together. Very specific things that would take a lot of extra modeling time if you just used standard functionality. So in here, then, these are very similar to if you use the NX sheet metal, very similar look and feel to them. So you see the on-screen preview, the drag handles, all of that for the user. So really speeds that process along as you're working on those interior structures for the aircraft. And so that one, we looked at the flange, and then here just to give you a look at how the step is, right? So as those two elements come together, you need to offset that and move that geometry. And it's as easy as picking the face and picking the direction and giving it the input, and it understands that. So this way, if you make changes to one part, it's associative, it's going to update these aero features as well. So very powerful, quick way for you to help with that development. Also, as we mentioned, the ship structure development. So all of these pieces are a part of the token pool. So whether you're doing the general arrangement of the ship, if you want to start with some of the basic design or get into the detailed design of all the structures for the ship, as well as out to manufacturing prep, all of those are available. So this example just shows a little bit around the basic design of how taking that initial ship hull, breaking it down into some of its key sections. And in this case, we're digging down into building one of the bulkheads. So having all of those, so using the geometry that's been developed up front, and you can just see how you get, instead of just using standard modeling functions, the ribbon bar really has all of these knowledge-driven apps for you to help you with this process. So as you go in to build that structure, you can go in and develop the bulkhead, set the different thicknesses. It divides it up into the different plates, doing the seams and different structures that you're developing there, and just seeing how, whether it's the stiffeners, how easy it is to generate those. And again, everything is built with these intelligent dialogues. So all you're having to do is go in and fill in that information and place those on the screen. And so everything that really helps us to drive, and this has been a very good competitive area for us in ship structure development, because of all of these specific knowledge-driven tools that you can go in and work from. So things like that, whether it's the stiffeners, whether you're putting in the brackets, the libraries and things that the user, all they have to do is pick the drop down, put in some of the values and select the geometry. Placement is automatic. All of the things that the designer would need are taken care of. So things like that, things here where you might have a cutout for a manhole through there, or it might be a lightning of the structure. Very easy to do for these cutouts. Just select the parts that are around it. It goes ahead and creates the geometry for you. So just some different ways of how you can tackle that with ship design, and why we've done well in this particular area. So another one then is more in the styling and concept design, is the realized shape. So with the realized shape, this is an environment to start with a primitive. You could have a sphere or block, that type of geometry. And instead of having to create sketches and all these datum planes and such, it creates the cage over the top of the geometry. And as you can see from the user, it's very fast to be able to develop. So in this case, it's more of an automotive hood example, but we use it on the consumer products a lot, where you can go in, push, pull, drag, resize, subdivide, all the things that you would need in order to give yourself the definition that you want, and super fast, right? You couldn't create all of the underlying curves and sketches to do what we're doing in, a minute or two, whereas it would take a long time for you to develop all of that. And then you'd have trouble if you had to change your mind and you wanted to change the design intent. It would be very difficult to go in and do that. So again, this is something that, you know, it's been around for a while now, but, you know, the main thing is allowing people more access to it through the token pool. And so any of the geometry created with realized shape, it's just like any other body or any other feature. It's part of the history tree, and it allows you to go in and analyze. So this is really just using the analyze shape functions to see black light or image reflection across the body, so that you can go in and see that. So any of that, and then any additional features, so you know, your edge blends and all of that, surface blending, all of that comes together quite well. And then the other one that we had mentioned is the general packaging. So this is a number of vehicle design automation tools. So similar to what you were seeing under the ship design, this is very similar here, so that a number of things for vehicle architecture, occupant packaging, vision tools, and the like. And so here, this is more starting out with the 2D person. We showed the NX human on the other side, but it actually can use the information from this. So if we went in and did the occupant packaging here in the 2D, when we drop in the NX human, it will use that to help it position and change all of the grips and how their legs are positioned and arms by using this information. So all of this is a many out-of-the-box tools. It incorporates a number of standards, automotive standards, into it. So it is a wizard type base. So you'll see as each one you select here, you go in, the user follows that to develop, you know, develop each segment that they're going through. You can see here, this is for reach zone. So it creates that surface geometry. If that person brought their hands off the steering wheel, how far could they reach? What could they do there? Other things, same thing vision wise, we saw how NX human, you could bend the person's head and see where, but here we can use this as well to see what their vision is and actually mark geometry. So in case somebody's looking out over the, say in this case, the hood of the vehicle, how far could they see before it, because of the geometry, it stops off. So here we're looking for that hood visibility line. So again, a number of different additional tools, but this just gives you some initial thoughts about what is possible, right? What can you do with this, and how does that operate inside the environment? And then another popular one then is really the routing side. So being able to have the routing base plus, in this case, creating the electrical harnesses. So here, instead of having to use a spline, and that spline doesn't maintain tangency if you move the components and stuff, in routing, we use the smart ports that are attached to the components, the routing components. And that way, if you start to move those around, everything stays connected. You can easily go in and create, you know, the main path with the spline. The heel path is nice because it automates that. You're basically picking the two locations and it's generating everything in between. So you go ahead and develop out those, and that's really what the routing base brings to your, is how do you create those paths and how can you do that quickly to all of your objects. And then as you continue on, the next thing is actually how do we connect over to your ECAD system. So we're open so that it doesn't matter which ECAD system you have, so you can bring that information in. So the component connections list or your net lists, that information can be read in. Most systems have those as a text file. Obviously, where we've gone with this is if you have the mentor tools, those have a tighter integration, so we don't have to pass the files. We can do a direct connection. But the idea is here, you're taking that information and it knows the gauge of the wire, it knows the color of the wire, it calculates your cut lengths, all of that, so that you're more accurate when you develop these harnesses. So in here, you have the 3D harness. It also has the tools to flatten this out for manufacturing. So create your manufacturing form boards, and you can set this up. You can use the the tables, the smart tables, to put out all of the information about the pins and connectors and all of that, so that you can generate the correct harness. So we already talked about this a little up front, but just again to reiterate, the translators, there are the direct translators for CATIA, Pro-E, and Creo. Also then some ones that are the neutral. So ACES, again, as I mentioned, is the Autodesk modeling kernel. So it's similar to Parasolid. So it's basically doing that exchange of information, as well as if you're doing any model-based definition. So in the aerospace industry, as more people are exchanging, and then even the automotive, STEP AP242 supports the model-based definition. So your PMI, so all of your tolerancing and dimensions and notes and things like that, 242 supports that exchange of that information. So these are ones we get asked about a lot too. How could we use those? And that's part of the token pool. And then finally, the last function we were just going to showcase here is in the tooling side, right? Tooling and fixture side. If you have parts that are more formed sheet metal rather than where you would just take a 90-degree break, these we can go in and perform the flattening of that, right? So you can take those complex drawn shapes, flatten that geometry out. And besides just creating what does the blank look like, it's calculating, where's the part thinning, what are the stress and strain on the parts. You can also predict spring back with this. So a number of those things that you can go in and use to generate that. And that way, get an idea up front. Can we make this part? Can we create the tooling for that as we put it, say, into progressive die? We'd be ready to go. So everything's based on the finite element method. So it does do a mesh. It does take into account the material characteristics, and it's very easy for the designer to use this because, again, it's a step-by-step. You follow the dialogue from top to bottom, and you get the output from there. So very quick way to accomplish those tasks. So the question becomes, how do I get started? We talked about what you would need to purchase, and then how do I learn this? So the documentation has both details and some step-by-step instructions. So if you go into the NX documentation, realize shape, there's information, animation designer. If you go down to the routing or the ship structures or, the vehicle design or human modeling, all of those are there for you. So I recommend, digging into those areas as a starting point to see how to use them and how you could gain the most advantage with them. So, why choose this method over, say, some of the others? I think there's three key things. The value to all of our customers is that increased productivity. And we showed a lot of the industry specific ones because we've taken a lot of the knowledge that we've gained and added that into NX. So instead of you having to do just normal modeling functions or drafting functions or assembly functions, we've put those modules in that increase the productivity. So we have over 50 modules in there today. We will continue to add. I know specifically there are some more coming with the June release of NX. So there's going to be some more tools added to that are coming out. The second one is the enhanced flexibility. As opposed to your company having to go each time and say, hey, I need some money to buy this module. If we look at it from, hey, we can make the investment in the tokens, now I have access to all of those modules. So rather than being limited to one area, we have that flexibility to use all of those tools that are on that list that we showed earlier. And then finally, it's a cost-effective method, right? There's one price for access to all of those modules that we show in the list, right? So all of those things come at one cost instead of incremental cost across all of that. So your productivity, your flexibility, and the price point, I think all of those help make a better story for each company to go out and to invest in using the tokens. So with that, I think we've covered all of the things that we had in our agenda. So I'd like to open it up for questions. Maybe Scott has seen some come in over the over the chat, or there may be some other ones posted. So at this point, I'll hold with that. And Scott, let me know what you have.
So Jonathan is currently unmuting everyone, or making it possible, I should say, for you to unmute yourself. So if you want to ask any questions out loud, then you should be able to unmute yourself now and ask that question. While folks are figuring that out, we do have some questions in the group chat. May Taylor, also from Siemens Digital Industry Software, has joined us and has been kind enough to be answering some of those questions as we've moved along. For example, one question was, what is the application that requires more than 100 tokens? And that is the NX General Packaging, a very powerful part of NX, requires 102 tokens. And she also pointed out in response to a question that, unlike with some competing products, the NX tokens do not get consumed. So you don't buy a pool of 50,000 tokens and they gradually get used up through the year. They're a pool, as Mike has explained, that are used only when the module is being used and then returned to the pool. There was a question about what capabilities are available in NX, but not yet available through tokens. And May has told us that that refers to anything that involves royalties. So for the most part, everything is included. If you have a question about a particular capability, just follow up with us here at ATA, and we can help you. There was also some questions about whether if you had enough tokens, could you use tokens to basically enable an NX Mach 1 bundle? And the answer to that is no. You have to already have an NX Mach 1 bundle in order to access the tokens. So even if you do have 5 token bundles, you got 500 tokens to spread among 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 users, you still have to have an NX Mach 1 license for each user. So we do have a question from Donald. Mike, do tokens work across global licenses also?
So they do. So they are available with that. So you can put those onto, again, they go right onto the sold to. So if it's a WAN type situation, they are supported with that.
And are global tokens more expensive than non-global tokens?
That's a good question. That is a very good question.
It seems likely that they are, but if that becomes
that. I can actually answer that. Yes, they are, and it does vary country to country, and there are some additional EULA things that have to go into. So every time you do global licensing, it's a case-by-case approval by Siemens. It's something that we do, and we can do it routinely. Just start the conversation early, because it's not like getting that easy agreement sent in your inbox and accepted, and the order is processed minutes later or a day later. It does take maybe a couple of weeks actually of lead time, because as with all things, lawyers are involved. Gotta love the end user license agreements.
Yes, great. Thank you, Dan. That's perfect. Yep.
We also have a question here, Mike, about our finite element modelers included in the token purchase. Now, we know we have another webinar on Friday on SimCenter 3D value-based licensing or tokens, and that has access to all of the capabilities of Nastran and all of its advanced capabilities. But it did make it appear during your presentation here that some limited FE capabilities are available directly through NX. Could you tell us about that and what's included in the tokens?
Sure. So the couple things that we were talking about there were more around, like the last one that I closed out with was the one-step formability, right? So that tool is really a sheet metal flattening tool. So it uses FEA to help calculate that. It meshes the part and it uses those to determine how that flattens out. So there isn't, if you just said, well, what about, the thing that you get with the Mach 1, or you get the stress and vibration wizard. So that's in the Mach bundle. You don't have to worry about using tokens to run that. So those are already foundational to the base license. But there are no other finite element tools that are run with the NX CAD specific tokens. It would be, hey, if you had the, NX Design Sim or went to any of the Teamcenter products, then you would actually use those tokens, which were separate or different, which again, May will cover in the next webinar. They actually are separate.
So if you're interested in that, Chris, then I would suggest you join us on Friday for the Teamcenter 3D token presentation. And one of the things that you should know about Teamcenter 3D, if you're not already a user, is that it is built on the foundation of NX, and it is also possible to upgrade a Mach 1 seat or higher to the Teamcenter 3D structures or the Teamcenter 3D engineering desktop, and then have all of the original functionality of your Mach 1 bundle and access to Teamcenter 3D. But the Teamcenter 3D tokens and the NX tokens are in different bundles, but can certainly be shared in 2 different pools amongst all the users you have.
Yeah, and just so you know, I mean, we are looking at that process because obviously the Teamcenter tokens were first. They were introduced first. They've actually been out for a while. And so that idea has caught on with the design community. So we initially offered this new design token, but we're moving in that direction. You'll see some things about now the Teamcenter token covers a broader stretch of functionality, and then eventually there will be something that we put out for all of that. But again, that's not in the near term that we're going to do that. So again, these are on an annualized basis that you would do a subscription for. So if you're using the CAD and the CAE, go ahead and use those for now. And then as we make changes, you can migrate to the newer tokens as they become available.
Absolutely. Any other questions, either through the chat or verbally? We'd be happy to take them now.
Yeah, Mike, I have a question for you, and that is sort of about the mechanics of how to release tokens once you've checked something out. So say that I start my NX session and I start using an application that needs tokens. To release those tokens, do I just stop using that functionality, or do I have to completely close NX, or what does that look like?
Sure, good question. So no, you do not have to, you don't have to close, or you don't have to go back to the gateway application. You just have to get out of it. So like when we were working with, I'll use the NX Human example, when I activate that icon and I'm going through and doing the different tasks, that is active, right? Where we've put that person in and we're manipulating it. Once we're finished with that, the tokens automatically go back into the pool. There isn't any manual mechanism that you have to do to put them back, right? It's just when I'm done with that, then that goes back to the pool and you continue working.
Okay, we are a
Very
few
cool.
minutes past our 45 minutes for the webinar, so I think we will wrap things up at this point. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us through the website we showed earlier, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions about NX tokens. And on Friday, you can join us for the presentation on Teamcenter 3D tokens. So thank you very much, everyone. We will be ending the session. And also do keep in mind, as I mentioned before, that this session is recorded. So if you have friends or colleagues who would like to view the recording later, they'll be able to access it from our website. Thanks very much, everyone.